Willow, Season 6, Chapter 12, Poisoned Gift. When I was about 4 or 5 years old, I was invited to a lot of birthday parties. Everyone in my class was. It was standard operating procedure for every student to invite every other student. In fact, we didn't even have to bother doing the invitations ourselves. Through the medium of our kindergarten teacher, our parents made all the arrangements. Presents were bought in my name, seldom involving me in the selection or approval process. They were wrapped in the same paper I had chosen for Jeannie Robbins' gift the first week, establishing a pattern I would be chained to for the rest of the year. I make it sound awful, of course, an infringement on my free will and agency. Truth is, like all the other kids, I was just glad to go have cake, play, and see a lot of colorful balloons. Why would I have any complaints? As time went on, my relationships with the other children would gain in complexity. Nothing dramatic, but small grudges and connections would form. If Benjamin Canton took my favorite spot for nap time, he would be an enemy for life. Meanwhile, when Melissa Raymond offered to share her oatmeal cookies that one time, she and I were linked by blood. That meant some of those birthday parties were suddenly a demilitarized zone where I could run into some of my foes. But, if only for the sake of the celebrated, I had to keep a smile on my face and not start any trouble. One would think that, growing up, we would shake free from the bindings of such social hypocrisy. Anyone working in customer service will testify to how false that is, but also anyone dealing with unintentionally poisoned gifts. Nisha had me name the thing. With a smile on my face and joy in my voice, I had to come up with a moniker for her own poisoned gift. It felt like naming a hand grenade. Just picking up the green yarn raccoon gave me goosebumps. The little abomination sits limp in my hand. The color and size of a Granny Smith apple, it weighs next to nothing. Black eyes look up at me, treacherous intent behind them. If Annabelle could read my mind, she'd think me crazy, but she wasn't there in Ophelia's yarn shop, facing 24 toys just like this one. She doesn't know, and neither does Nisha. But I do. And every strand of yarn caressing my palm is a reminder of the far less gentle intent of the golems that night. "Benjamin," I blurt out, eager to have the conversation behind me. "That's a good name," Nisha approves, chin raised with authority. Of course, I'll have to throw out or burn this horrible thing, but until then, I suppose I should enjoy little Nisha's generosity and kind gesture. "I'll put him next to the register," I offer, struggling to find a place for Benjamin that would keep him in plain sight. "Until the end of the day. Then I'll take him home." Satisfied with my reception of her gift, Nisha plops down on her stool. I'm keenly aware that she monopolized half a table just to be hanging at the counter. If Gagnon notices, he'll be fuming. So I see no reason to do anything about it. "Okay, Nini." Anais kisses her daughter on the head. "I'll be back in a couple of hours. Be good." We all watch what I assume to be the most tired and distressed woman in Willow walk out of the cafe. I can't imagine the weight she must carry with every one of those steps, yet she makes it look so easy for the benefit of her child. "It helps to have something to take care of," Nisha says once the door is closed. "I'm sorry?" "That's why you need a friend like mine," she elaborates. "Someone to talk to that's not a person. Cats just judge you, and Mom won't let me have a dog, so I have my friends." She gestures to the table where Gagnon is working and her toys are waiting. "I told you," I say, placing the green raccoon on the counter where I can see it. "I have friends, but I appreciate that you thought of me." "It helps to have someone to take care of," she repeats, a little more serious this time. Is she implying that I'm the one in need of care? I struggled to decide if I should be flattered or insulted. Annabelle looks like she's caught the same subtlety as she squeezes out a half smile in my direction. Silent mockery in tow. I wish I had something for you in return. I get cookies and brownies. Sure, but your mom buys those for you to eat. I mean something significant, something with meaning. She raises an elbow to up on the counter, leaning in like an old bar regular might. On her diminutive frame, the gesture looks like a caricature. I don't need anything, she says, scratching the edge of her hairline. Everyone's always real eager to give me whatever I want. It's fun at first, but then it's like a reminder every time that I'm sick. Mom calls them welcome tokens of pity. I don't think they're welcome. It's not what I want. My eyes bulge a little with surprise, and I reach for my mug to refresh from the hot coffee pot. If I'm going to be dealing with one of those wise beyond her years children, I'm going to need more caffeine in me. Okay, I say after a moment. Then what would you want? Just for fun, if you could have anything, what would it be? The question perplexes little Nisha for a second. She twists on her stool, and for a moment, I think I might have lost her attention. It looks like she might hop off and go back to her toys any second, but then I see where her eyes actually went. There's another child her age, walking behind his father and strolling down Rue Principale. The boy looks the kind of miserable children get when they're just bored. It makes me realize that perhaps my question was cruel, demanding to know what should be obvious. I want to make it to summer, she says, without a hint of sadness or melancholy. Just be healthy enough and not have any treatments so I can go to the wilds. The what? 2 years in Aquilo, and I'm still learning new things about this community. You don't know about the wilds? Annabelle and Nisha ask in unison, as if I just confessed to having never seen the moon. I have no idea what either of you are even talking about. What's the wild? The two girls, a decade apart in age, look at each other with harmonious complicity. The glimmer in their eyes speaks of a shared sisterhood that only members of a sorority or particularly close-knit cult would have. Only the best time a kid from Aquilo can have on a long, sunny weekend, Annabelle explains. It's got everything, Nisha adds. We ride horses, catch fireflies, eat s'mores by the campfire while we tell scary stories. There's a lake, and we learn to braid long grass into the shape of animals and do archery. I take a sip of my coffee while listening to the litany of activities one can expect from the wilds. These two might as well be spokespeople for whatever organization sponsors that weekend. Their enthusiasm alone would be enough to sell the package to any kid ages 6 and up. So, it's like summer camp? What a naive question to ask true believers. It's so much more, Annabelle counters. That's like saying the Dancelites are like a party. It's a rite of passage, a moment in time. It's transcendent, Nisha cuts in. You went, blonde woman? Annabelle, and yes, when I was about your age. I still have my t-shirt and skyfish. I don't know what a skyfish is, but the very mention of it makes Nisha's eyes grow even larger. The further into this conversation we dive, the less sense these two are making. But Nisha's excitement is worth my confusion. Besides, it's nice to learn more of the local culture. The two of them go on like this for a while. Nisha will ask Annabelle about an activity, and the blonde woman answers with tales of nearly drowning or getting lost in the woods with her friend Petunia or marking fairy circles in clearings. How much is childish fantasy and how much is just Aquilo things is difficult to know, but there's something delightful and invigorating about watching their discourse. The way they go on and on, Annabelle with her fond memories, and Nisha longing to build some of her own, it makes me hungry to find a way to help. Satisfied and rejuvenated by all this talk of the wilds, I get a sudden burst of inspiration. Without a word, I reach under the counter to take the old Dufour family grimoire. The tome, thick already, is now heavy with purpose. Gagnon is still at his table, working hard on his notes, unpacking a new laptop and setting everything up for his show to resume production later today. To his credit, the grump hasn't infringed upon Nisha's territory by as much as an inch. Whatever his vocal opinion on the matter, he abides by the rules to a fault. There he is, though. I walk to him, carrying a problem to which he should have been the obvious solution from the start. Encyclopedic knowledge of cooking, experienced and learned from all around the world, all wrapped up in curmudgeon regalia. Without warning or ceremony, I cast my shadow upon Chef Frederick Gagnon, and, offering no care for who I might disturb, I drop the recipe grimoire on the table, allowing it to create a mighty thump. "Sorry to bother you, Chef," I say, standing over him, satisfied that I have his attention. "It's my turn to ask a favor." The plan wasn't to impress Chef Frederick Gagnon. Sure, in front of him I have just dropped a cookbook that should probably be kept in a museum. Some of these pages predate the United States of America, but I didn't expect him to gush with admiration and reverence at my family heirloom. Still, a bit of a reaction would have been nice. Instead, he pulls the old man move of digging through his bag to pull out a small leather case containing his glasses. Only once secured on his nose does he deign to close his notepads and set aside his laptop, reaching for the Dufour recipe grimoire. "What am I looking at?" he asks, raising the heavy tome with the tip of his fingers. I'm glad to see him take such care of the old book, treating it like he would a soufflé fresh from the oven, or a wedding cake laden with decorative frosting. "A recipe book," I answer, while pulling up a chair to sit beside him. "I can see that, Miss Dufour," Gagnon says, looking over his lenses but pointing at the carved lettering on the cover. "Is this a movie prop? A relic? A craft project?" I reach over and flip the book open. It lands on a page for what looks like creme brulee. The bookmark, a piece of watercolor paper with a pretty design yellowed by time, tells me this is one of Amelia's recipes. The writing is clean and the ingredients are listed in alphabetical order. The whole page is so neat as to belie its age. There's even a little watercolor and ink drawing of suggested presentation. It's my ancestors' recipe book, where they kept all their little culinary creations and ideas that they wanted to pass down to later generations. Using but his thumb and pinky, Gagnon flips a page forward. The paper nearly shivers at being exposed to the air. Broad cursive letters simply spell out savory bone broth with meat atop a page that is strictly utilitarian. These are the letters of someone with little time or energy to spare on futilities. They're the words of Melody, the first Dufour witch. Gagnon runs his finger over the paper, reading the contents of the page with bold reverence. I can't imagine that an antiquated recipe for broth, penned by a woman half frontier matron, half witch, would hold much interest beyond the academic for him, but he does respect the origin. He flips another page. This one has Doris's hallmark flowery handwriting and pasted photograph of the dish in question, a marmalade biscuit that I don't remember having ever seen in the book. "You claim to not be able to afford to travel," he mumbles, swallowing back unwanted awe. "But you bring me what might be the oldest recipe book in America like it were a binder full of dishes in plastic sleeves. Please tell me you need my help auctioning this off." The very concept hits me like a towel wet with sewage. It's as surprising an idea as it is repugnant. To sell my family recipe book? I'd rather sell both kidneys. The pages will fall to dust as I turn them before I even consider parting with this book. Watching him go through the pages, one at a time, like a museum curator afraid to damage an artifact, I'm suddenly self-conscious of how I've been treating the book. I'd only ask for a small cut, he continues, almost salivating at the idea of selling my property. Even 30% would probably represent a respectable fortune, assuming this is authentic. No, I object, loud as if I'd dropped oil on my hand. I'm not selling it. The urge to grab the book and pull it away from his greedy hands is strong, but I resist it for the sake of my mission. No, I repeat, far calmer. I just need your help with one of the recipes. Gently, I pick up the book and flip it to page 73. Then, more careful than I've ever been, I put the book back in front of Gagnon, pointing to the offending and undecipherable words. That, I say. I can read most of the ingredients, but there's a few that I can't figure out. You've been cooking longer than me, and the words fail me. I know what I want to say. I know what I have to say. But something forces my throat shut, making me choke on the required humility. There's no question that Gagnon has been at this game longer than I have. While I may be quick to put down his cooking, especially when reacting to his criticisms, I realize that he's had a deeper and more varied experience in kitchens I can only dream of visiting. I may be the best cook in Aquilo, even with his permeating presence, but I'm not the most knowledgeable one. All I have to do is admit that to ask for his assistance. All I have to say is that he knows more than I do, but a wall of pride keeps the words from spilling. These pages are older than I am, Miriam, Gagnon says, saving me from my paralysis. I don't know that my encyclopedic knowledge of food is up to the task. Never mind that this looks as if it were penned by some madwoman with palsy. He's not wrong. Philomene's handwriting isn't just sloppy, it's aggressive, as if her pen had a vendetta against paper. The words are barely legible, and the symbols she uses as shorthand amount to gibberish. Still, a recipe has a structure. I don't need to be told what to do with eggs, water, and flour when making pasta. Like a puzzle, I just need a few pieces solved to get me started, then the rest will fall into place. This is a fruit tart, it seems, Gagnon says, leaning in while putting his glasses up over his head. You don't need an explanation on how to do a short crust, and this looks like the basic ingredients for a custard. That leaves the choice of fruit. I'm guessing they're meant to be over a jam or jelly. There's a lot of wasted words and scribbling, but I don't see how this recipe stands out. I put my own finger atop one of the ingredients, intent to make a point. The fruit is the issue. I can't tell what any of these are. This sketch looks like a blackberry, and I guess that word is bleuet, so that tracks. But what is this? Pomme is apple, but the sketch looks more like an oblong mango. Gagnon puts his glasses on again, then pulls them off, trying to get a better look at the tiny sketch next to the ingredient list. He then proceeds to flip around the pages in the book. Much of his reverence has fallen under the weight of curiosity. Fingers deft as only an artist's can be, he navigates back and forth to other of Philomene's signature pages, stopping now and then on some of Amelia's or even Doris's recipes. My heart drops as he bends one page almost enough to fold it, just so he can compare the entry we're studying with something similar but far clearer. Pomme soufre, he states, satisfied with his observation. Happy with his successful deduction, he goes back to page 73. Folding his glasses back into their case, he gently pushes the book away, his fingers only reluctantly giving up on the valuable heirloom. A sulphur apple? I ask, picking my book back up, as if worried he might steal it. Never heard of that. Sounds nasty. He smiles and shakes his head. Not sulphur, soufre, as in pain. Don't ask me what that's supposed to be, but judging by this village's name, I suspect it's a local thing. Or maybe your ancestors imported manchineel, and the recipe is actually meant to poison whoever eats it, though that seems unlikely. If I were to place a wager, I'd say it's probably crab apples. It's not, though. I'm French enough that I should have figured it out immediately. A pain apple sounds like the kind of fruit you get from a pain tree, or perhaps an ache willow tree. But there's no such thing. I nod, slower than I should, as I process how impossible my task has now become. I get it now, why Olivia refused to help with this recipe. Her secret is known to me, but she's unwilling to share it. But I'm unwilling to let Ophelia win. Yeah, I mumble. Crab apples, that makes sense. My words lack conviction and volume. Their lie only there to reassure myself. Gagnon barely seems to notice them at all, his focus again on my recipe book. You know, Miriam, he says, drumming his fingers on the top of the table, hungry for things that do not feed. You could get an archivist to make copies of those pages. Keep the bookmarks as souvenirs if you must, but then sell the book. There's easily 6 to 7 figures in there. You could open your own restaurant, travel, learn, be the chef you're meant to become. My head shakes halfway through his offer. He knows what buttons to push and what strings to pull, I'll give him that. My pride would have likely been tempted if not for 2 things. First, I'm already far too shaken to give the idea any thought. Second, I know the Dufour women who came before me would never forgive such a trespass. Dead as they may be, I've already felt their reach from beyond the grave, and I'm not blind to what I've seen. The dead sometimes linger, and they take slights such as these seriously. I would not want to face the ghost of Melody Dufour, thirsty for justice. No, I answer, firmer than I thought myself capable. Suit yourself, Gagnon growls. But you're wasting an opportunity, and worse, cheating me out of helping you. The shoot is supposed to conclude today. At any moment, Bertrand should walk into the Ache Willow with a brand new camera in hand. After perhaps an hour of setting up, he should have the expensive piece of equipment ready to go. After the incident, there was much talk about having saved the settings on his phone and the lens not being damaged, all hints that we could be back in business in a flash. Gagnon had even come up with a new shot list he wanted to do, and I once again prepared all the ingredients and utensils so we can hit the ground running. Time ticks by, however, without Bert showing up again. For a while, Gagnon and Nisha share their table in silence. Eventually, the child starts to ask the chef questions. I can't hear their conversation from the counter or above the low din of music, customers, and my own work, but it looks like a well-worn dynamic. The kid inquires while the adult patiently answers, eager to get back to their work. Each reply births a new question, however, and the cycle is thus set in motion. After every order served, I look over to make sure I don't have to leap into action and save the good chef from drowning in curiosity, or save Nisha from Gagnon's wrath once he reaches his boiling point. It's like watching a bomb diffuse itself, Annabelle says, following my eyes. She's been quiet, reading and taking notes from a series of books of her own. I keep trying to ask what that's all about, but I can't seem to find the time. Judging by the covers, I'd say they're more mixology books, but there's also an entry-level treatise on psychology in the stack. Like a flame dangling over a bucket of gasoline. Customers come and go. The light outside starts to dim with the early arrival of twilight. Soon, Anais comes to claim her daughter, and not long after that, the evening rush begins. While I keep tossing dirty looks in Chef Gagnon's direction, the weight of my stare remains insufficient to break through. I can't exactly call out his name, but as the early winter's night creeps in, I'm starting to wonder if we'll be pulling an all-nighter or if the shoot will once again be postponed. A possibility I can't afford. It's only when I get a few minutes to bus around the dining room, picking up dirty plates and empty mugs, do I get to ask my own questions. So, Gagnon looks up, bored and nonchalant, a hair's width away from mild annoyance. Perhaps you want to supply me with more of a complete question, Miss Dufour? So, I repeat with naked frustration, any word from Bert? Not a crumb, he answers, closing his notepad. I stand over him, bus tray heavy in my arms. It's a struggle to read what he's feeling. One would think him livid that his employee is running late and pushing back production even further. I wouldn't expect him to arrive either, Gagnon adds, packing the new laptop and papers into his leather briefcase. I fired him. Glasses, mugs, and dishes rattle as I put the tray atop the table. You what? Unbothered by my outburst, Gagnon stands, putting his bag on the chair and reaching for his coat. 12 times, Miriam. 12 times I tried to reach him. 8 text messages, 2 emails, and 2 phone calls. None were answered. I think I'm well justified in my decision to break ties. He's lucky I don't demand he pay for the equipment he destroyed. He continues with his departure preparations, pulling on his coat and slipping on his gloves. Picking up the busing tray again, I make sure to stand directly in his path. And when were you going to let me know about this new delay? I demand, conscious of the shadow of the equipment still cluttering my dining room. On my way out, he explains, his own patience wearing thin at my escalating anger. I was going to discuss this, as well as an idea on how to integrate your little friend into the show. Children are a short path to profit in this industry. The casual indifference is 1 teaspoon too many. Without a second thought, I shove at the chef with my busing tray, pushing him back a solid foot and sending him to scramble not to drop his bag. Miss Dufour! Hush! Your employee goes missing for a full day without a word, and you don't think of checking up on him? Aren't you worried? I'm livid. This is the exact kind of callous attitude me and my fellow baristas received when I worked for that big-name coffee shop. Our humanity tightly defined by which shift we could cover and the quality of customer service we could provide. I'm more worried about him running away with the camera he was sent to purchase. Gagnon wipes away invisible dust from his coat, as if brushing off the indignity of my treatment of him. Don't give me that look, Miriam. You knew him in cooking class. The boy had no direction then. There's no reason to think he's changed. One thing I had never been privy to was seeing Chef Gagnon's point of view during those months under his tutelage. It's one thing to assume someone's motivation is built upon a lack of empathy, but quite another to stand by them and experience it. All the recent compliments and complicity had brought me to his side of the divide, allowing the mask to drop. The compassion and generosity directed at me wasn't as much a softening of the man, but rather how he treats those he views as peers. People like Bert, Stefan, and Miriam from 2 years ago remain below his contempt. Is that it? I demand. You weren't going to be doing more than that? Couldn't you go check on him? Of course I was going to do more, he says, his face twisting under growing impatience. But the camera is insured. I can have the charges reversed, and I had to stay here to protect the rest of my investment. Bertrand and the camera can be replaced, and with a few tweaks, I can still make this one of my most profitable. Glasses and mugs crack and shatter as my busing tray hits the floor. The load didn't just drop from my hands. I tossed it to the ground with force and intent. If it landed on Gagnon's feet, all the better. If his expensive shoes got stained, that would be a bonus. Annabelle, I call out, my voice easily cutting through the sudden silence. I need a ride to the motel. Steal your mother's car, she replies, sarcastic but already getting up. Got it. I untie my apron but make a point to remove the wooden spoon from the front pocket. Rushing to slip on my coat and wrap the flannel scarf around my neck, I keep an eye on Gagnon, who's tiptoeing through the broken glass and ceramic. Miss Dufour, he admonishes, you can't just leave your business unattended. I'm not. You run restaurants? Well, you're in charge until I get back. I toss him the apron. Notepads, pens, and a handful of change fly out of the pocket before he can catch it. Annabelle and I are about to storm out the front door when I turn around, jabbing my finger in Gagnon's direction. You can start by cleaning up this mess. Getting to the motel took too long. There's only one such establishment in Aquilo, Le Cottage, which, despite the French-sounding name, sits far on the southern edge of town and as deep into the United States as Aquilo goes. I think I could have walked there faster than it took for Annabelle and I to get her mother's car and drive up to Le Cottage, but there was no way in hell I'd be going to look for a missing person on my own. That's a path I've walked before and found the scenery repulsive. It must have been annoying for Bertrand to get these accommodations, going back and forth through the border every day for the production. Locals know the ins and outs of living in this sort of village. While the divide between countries is somewhat permeable in Aquilo, it doesn't mean outsiders like Bert and Gagnon don't attract scrutiny. There are a couple of bed and breakfasts where he could have stayed instead, but I suspect those were more expensive and thus turned down by Chef Gagnon. After all, what's someone else's inconvenience if he can save a few dollars?
Le Cottage ain't so bad,
Annabelle explains as she drives.
It's not like those motels where people pay by the hour, There's even a pool, and on really hot days in the summer, they let the local kids use it.
That's nice, I reply, detached from the conversation.
What I'm trying to say is that he's very unlikely to have been stabbed in the shower. I'm sure Bert is fine.
Even Annabelle's chipper tone fails to reassure me, perhaps because I see cracks in her sunny attitude. The cottage, or the cotage, as the broken neon sign would suggest, is exactly what I pictured in my mind. The parking lot almost spills onto the road, separated only by a shallow ditch. There can't be more than 12 rooms, and none seem to be any different from the other. Red glowing letters advertise vacancies to anyone passing by, and I wonder if the word no has ever been lit up next to them. A thin coat of light snow has settled over the asphalt, covering all surfaces with a thin white blanket. Room 7, I remind Annabelle as she navigates the parking. My heart sinks a little when I notice there's already a car in front of number 7, a little white Fiat, freshly arrived, judging by the tread marks in the snow. The windows on the car are clean, with flakes still melting on contact as they touch the glass. Faint light sneaks out from between the cracks in the curtains, and the occasional moving shadow betrays the presence of someone in the room. For a moment, I let myself hope that Bertrand maybe lost or broke his phone. Maybe he was caught in traffic while in the big city getting the camera. Perhaps he just got back and is on the phone right now, apologizing to Gagnon and planning for how they'll resume the shoot. Deep down, however, I doubt it. Something tells me Bertrand doesn't drive a white Fiat. You don't have to come in, I say, pushing the door to the car open. I have no idea what I'll find there.
Please,
Annabelle says, getting out of the driver's seat.
You know what my mom does. You think I'm just going to sit here and wait for the demons to come?
With that, she reaches into the back seat, pulling out a heavy, menacing tire iron. I don't know that anyone would be scared of frail little Annabelle and her blunt instrument, but then again, I know what her mom does. She tries to play the part, slinging the tire iron over her shoulder as if it were a baseball bat, but all it does is show how heavy it is in her hands. Before going in, I want to have a look at that car. Maybe I'll look through the window and see an empty lens box lost amid empty coffee cups. Or there'll be a camera case badly hidden on the back seat, taunting thieves to break a window. Any sign that this is, in fact, Bert's car would make me more comfortable with walking into room number 7. Alas, it isn't the case. Instead, the car is pristine and looks almost new. Not a hint of detritus and few decorations to speak of. Only a small plastic flower attached to a vent in the dashboard, along with a pink knit cover over the steering wheel, the kind you'd expect a grandmother to have to keep her hands from getting cold while driving.
Please get away from my car, Miriam.
I knew the moment I saw the knitting. Like smell to a skunk, knitting follows her everywhere she goes. It's her supervillain theme. She stands in the doorway of room 7, bundled up in her red coat and matching hat, pulling her scarf up to cover the bottom of her face. Ophelia. And, for a fleeting moment, less than a second, I swear, I hope she gives Annabelle a reason to use that tire iron. Aquilo is written by J.F. Dubow and narrated and produced by me, Amy Frost. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast platform. Want to support the show? Buy us a coffee. Go to ko-fi.com/Aquilo to donate. Aquilo has a Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Aquilo for details. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram under the username Aquilo.